Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Normal Baseball Podcast. My name's Lewis. That's Normal Dog, otherwise known as Alex. And today we are going to be talking about how Juan Soto, the phenomenal generational free agent, has just agreed to a contract with the New York Mets. Alex, how you feeling?
Yeah, this is an absolute huge contract. In case you live under a rock or haven't seen it already, the deal is for 15 years and $765 million, instantly becoming the largest contract in all of sports history, not just baseball, all of sports history. It's an incredible contract. I'm excited to talk about how it affects not just Juan Soto, not just this year's free agent class, but also the Mets themselves, where they go from here, and the other teams that were in it.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling how much money he signed for, which, let's just stop beating around the bush and just say it. He signed for 15 years, $765 million. Initial
Yep.
reaction, wow. Juan
Yeah,
Soto deserves that money. Don't get me wrong, he's a generational talent. Crazy that the New York Mets and Steve Cohen were willing to go above and beyond to ensure that for the rest of his career, Juan Soto will wear a New York Mets hat.
yeah, and that's not even to mention the $75 million signing bonus he gets from signing that contract. So, that's another 75 million right there. And then additionally, this contract has an opt-out after year 5. Soto can opt out after the 5th year, but the Mets can void that opt-out by adding another $5 million every year, which brings the total contract to over $800 million. This is, we expected Soto to get this gigantic contract like nothing we've ever seen before. But the reports on Saturday were, you know, the Mets and the Yankees are bidding, 710 million, 730 million. And then on Sunday, it just gets bumped up to 765 million and, could get to over 800 million. It's a lucrative amount of money. It's incredible. I never thought we'd see a contract this high. And, I think this says a lot about the direction that baseball's going in terms of paying players. I mean, $51 million a year is insane, and maybe 55 million in a couple of years.
Yeah, don't think I could have said it better myself. If we do look at Juan Soto and how he fits into the New York Mets, right now Fangraphs has him batting at the 2 hole, right behind Francisco Lindor, with Mark Vientos protecting him, which, I've heard everyone, oh, it's no Aaron Judge protecting him. Mark Vientos has had quite the breakout last season. I'm not going to say he's as good as Aaron Judge. No one is. But let's stop saying that he has no protection in the lineup. Vientos is a star in the making. I'm not going to say that he's a star yet, but he is definitely getting to that point in his career if he continues on the path that he's on.
No, I certainly see your point, and he's a young guy, so he hasn't really had the chance to prove himself all that much. Before we talk about the Mets lineup, though, I want to talk just a little bit more about this contract and the sweepstakes that surrounded it throughout the whole offseason. So the 5 teams all year were all offseason pretty much in the front running were the Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, Blue Jays. The I know 2 offers. I know the Red Sox offered him 700 million for 15 years, which is a pretty competitive offer, seeing that they have not wanted to spend money in the last however many years. They've been kind of tight with their money. And then the Yankees offered him 760 million for 16 years. So $5 less million per year and then one more year on the contract. And Soto declined. And Soto decided, I'm going to go to Queens. Now, my question becomes, I think the Dodgers also capped their offer at 600 million, so they were nowhere near. My question for you is, that being said, the Yankees offered him 760 million for one more year as well. Do you think this was just a flat out bidding war the entire time?
I do believe that the money had a lot to do with it. And the fact that Steve Cohen was offering $75 million up front as a signing bonus, don't get me wrong, I think that's a very, very lucrative deal and something that's hard to say no to for anyone, not even just a professional athlete. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, though, I think Soto also saw the trajectory of both of these teams and believes that at the end of the day, the Mets have a better future than what the Yankees currently have. Because even if the Yankees did spend all that money, even if the Yankees matched that contract to a T, I still think Juan Soto goes to the Mets just because the Mets and Steve Cohen have more firepower, more flexibility, and are willing to go all in to ensure that Juan Soto can try to raise the trophy in Queens.
Well, because you look at it in terms of, the Mets have, I think, the 10th best farm system in baseball. The Yankees are towards the bottom, even bottom five of the league. I don't know the exact number, but that goes with the future. The Mets have a brighter farm system, more, even if those prospects don't necessarily come to fruition, you could still trade them to get other talent. I understand that, and they were in the NLCS last year. They did, take the Dodgers to 6 games, and then you look over at the Yankee side, and it's, you pay me this deal, and I don't know how many other free agents you're even going to be able to sign. The Mets is Steve Cohen. He has all the money in the world. That's the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? That's his whole thing. Is basically what I'm trying to say. He has all the money in the world. So I come here and you're still going to go out and get more free agents and we're going to win. I think that did have some play in it, but truly what I believe at the end of the day is that it came down to whichever team offered him the most money for the least amount of years just it came down to who offered the most money. It was a bidding war at the end of the day, in my opinion. And it's, again, like you said, it's hard to turn down a contract that could be upwards of $800 million. Even, I guess, technically $880 million when you add in that $75 million signing bonus. That's hard to pass up.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. Let's also not forget that, like you said, Steve Cohen, richest owner in baseball, I don't believe that he is done. And call that a hot take if you will. I think that there is still a trade to be made or a couple of signings that won't be break the market. I don't think Burns or Fried are really on their radar right now, but I can definitely see them. I can definitely see them going out and trying to trade for who's it on the White Sox? It's not Derek Crochet.
Yeah, it is.
It is Derek Crochet. My apologies.
Well,
I can see them trying to trade for him.
See, the thing is if you look at their lineup again, Frankie Lindor, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Jeff McNeil, Jose Siri, Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty. I mean,
Brett Beatty.
That is a good lineup if they don't even do anything to it. Where they're really struggling is the pitching side of things, where their rotation is Kodai Senga. Yes, he's their undeniable ace, but then behind him you have Frankie Montas, who they just signed to a 2-year deal. He's not he's not a 2-starter. With all due respect, he's not a 2-starter. And then behind him, you have David Peterson, who looked really, really good, but you don't necessarily know if he's going to follow up last season with another brilliant season because he had a sub-3 ERA last season. And then they signed Clay Holmes, and it's like, what are we doing with Clay Holmes? That could go either really well or really poorly, and I don't think there's any in between personally with that. And then you have Paul Blackburn just kind of sitting there. And I was talking to someone last night. I think Paul Blackburn might be the most random player in baseball. And then you look in their bullpen. They lost 7 bullpen arms in free agency this year or this offseason. And right now their bullpen is really just Edwin Diaz, Jose Butto, Reed Garrett, Tyler McGill, and Sean Reed Foley. Those are the 5 names in their bullpen. And that was the big problem in the postseason last year, is that their bullpen, they didn't have reliable arms in their bullpen. So that's going to be their main concern, in my opinion, moving forward, their bullpen and their rotation.
Yeah, I can understand that. What I will say, though, again, is I think that Steve Cohen is willing to spend. I think that we will see Steve Cohen try to build out somewhat of a bullpen. I think the rotation is locked. They are going to try also, don't forget, Clay Holmes as a starter.
That's what I said.
Forget that. Yep. It's just something that blows my mind personally as someone who watched a lot of Yankee games this year because of Juan Soto, obviously. Clay Holmes, in the second half especially, was not what everyone expected him to be, was not the all-star that everyone saw in the first half. If the Mets can develop him pitching-wise, which they've done with Severino, they did with Shamania, if they can do something there with him and Montas, then, you're kind of in a good position, in my opinion. But like I said, that bullpen does need a lot of help. I'm curious to see how the Mets go about fixing their bullpen problem.
Let's not forget that Sean Manaea is still a free agent. So there is always that chance of that reunion. The thing with Clay Holmes that is different from Sean Manaea and even Luis Severino is that Clay Holmes is not a starter. He is not a starting pitcher. He was a closer or reliever. And honestly, in my opinion, I also watched a good amount of Clay Holmes last year. One of his big problems was he threw too many pitches in his outings. He'd come in for a save, and by the end of it, he'd be at 30 pitches. So how do you, as a starter, then try to decrease that pitch count while trying to go more than one inning? You're trying to go, 5 or 6 innings minimum every time you go out there. So I think that's going to be their biggest ask with Clay Holmes, because he has the stuff at points. That's not really the issue. The issue is the pitch count, which is what I saw. And then going back to the payroll, I agree with you. I think Steve Cohen is willing to spend more money, and I don't think it's a problem for him. With the Soto contract now, their payroll is around like 220 million, 230 million, somewhere around there. Last year it was 324 million, which means they still have $100 million to play around with and throw at different free agents, if not more than that. Who knows if Steve Cohen is fine with going over 324 million on the payroll? I'm sure he is. It's Steve Cohen. So they have a lot of money still to throw at guys. And bullpen arms, even the best ones, they're only going to cost you like, 15 million ish.
Yeah.
So they could still make a couple of big splashes. I think I'd agree. And I think it will be aimed
Now,
at their bullpen.
let me ask you this, Alex. Juan Soto, New York Met. Really cool. A complete and utter superstar joining the side of Francisco Lindor in Queens. Do you think that means that the door for an Alonso Mets reunion is now closed?
I think it would depend on how much money Pete Alonso wants. I don't think the Mets are hell-bent on keeping him. Because, again, you have Vientos, and I think they'd be willing to test out Brett Baty at third again, give him one more chance, and let Vientos play first. I think they're fine with that. I don't think they're hell-bent on it. I think they should be more worried about their relief pitchers and even maybe their rotation if you want to go after a guy like Sean Manaea. I think they should be more concerned about that than getting Pete Alonso.
Okay. In my opinion, just to also give my part of it, I think that Pete wants to do whatever he can to stay with the Mets. However, with Soto signing this massive lucrative deal, I don't think there's a budget to also build a winning team if Pete Alonso does go to the Mets, comes back to the Mets,
Right.
excuse me.
It would take too much money to bring him back. That's why I said it depends on what he wants. It would just take too much money to bring him back at this time. That would make sense for them when they can go out and spend the money elsewhere to get better talent. And if you look at other first base options, if they want to sign another first baseman in free agency, if they say we want Vientos to play third, even though he wasn't great defensively at third, so they should be thinking of him as a first baseman. You still have guys like Paul Goldschmidt who you can get really cheap, and Paul Goldschmidt could put together a really good season. He might have just had a down year. And then if you want to look at it the other way, where they're saying, hey, we don't want Brett Baty to be playing third. We've kind of given him all his chances. We'll look to trade him. If they want to sign a third baseman, Alex Bregman's still out there. And I think there is a chance that they could still sign Bregman, given how much money Cohen has been willing to spend.
Yeah. And I think that's a very, very fair statement to make. If I'm the Mets, honestly, I think I shift my focus away from Pete Alonso and I look at Christian Walker, who's like sort of a stopgap while you figure out what to do with Brett Baty at third base. You have Vanitos play there, and you try to trade Brett Baty for hopefully a middle relief guy. I think is like what you could get. Not the top of the line, obviously, but there's some team that's willing to take a chance on a former top prospect that, in all honesty, is just a quad A player right now. He just needs to develop a little bit more. He needs more runtime and more security at third base, and I think then we can see Brett Baty break out into his own. But
I think you could potentially package Beatty and another prospect or two maybe to get a marquee free agent, like not free agent, a marquee like trade piece, like a Devin Williams or a Camilo Duvall. They could do that. That's not. I don't think that's out of the question. I don't think that's ridiculous to say at all either.
It's interesting that you mentioned Camilo Duvall because if hypothetical, let's just say the Mets go out and trade for him, and Clay Holmes does not pan out as a starter, are we talking about one of the most versatile 1-2-3s out of the bullpen between Duvall, Holmes, and Diaz? I think
Well,
you
you
realistically can say that that is one of the 1-2-3s that you don't want to face if you're a hitter.
Yeah, I'd say, no matter what, Edwin Diaz will be their closer this season. He's shown struggles, but he's going to be their closer this season.
Yes.
Then it becomes, Camilo Duvall will be eighth inning, Clay Holmes will be seventh inning. And that's before they even potentially sign more relievers. I mean, there's still a lot of options. If they don't want to do a trade, there's still a lot of options in terms of relievers on the market. You still have guys like Kenley Jansen, David Robertson, Kendall Graveman, Joe Kelly, Carlos Estevez, Tanner Scott, Kyle Finnegan, or even if they want to reunite with one of Ottavino, Paul Sewald, Ryan Stanek. There's a lot of really good relief pitching options out there on the market. I think they're going to get at least one, maybe two of them.
Yeah,
from free agency.
I agree with you on that statement. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of this offseason and the winter meetings go for the New York Mets.
Yeah, we're in the winter meetings right now. I think now that Soto has signed, it will snowball, and a lot of the other big name free agent hitters will sign. I don't think the pitchers really had anything to do with Soto. Maybe a little bit in terms of, if you want to talk about the Yankees going for Fried now more aggressively or Burns now more aggressively because they have that money, that type of thing. But I think the hitters will start to snowball, and we'll see a lot of those hitters sign during the winter meetings, which is a big flip-flop as to what we saw last year with all the hitters and big free agents not signing until really late in the offseason. I think the Soto signing kind of snowballs that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And now, we are about 20 minutes in, give or take a little bit. Let's look at the other side of the coin. The New York Yankees, the team that just lost the World Series with Juan Soto on their roster, is now in quite the predicament. Where do you think the realistic pivot move is for the Yankees in terms of fixing their lineup?
Realistically, for the Yankees, the Soto loss is not as bad as it seems. Yes, it's horrible that, the fan favorite, arguably right behind Aaron Judge, is gone, but they showed that they are willing to spend a lot of money, which is something that in past years, Hal Steinbrenner hasn't really shown that he'd like to do. But now offering one guy $760 million shows, hey, we have $760 million that we could spend. And now instead of on one player, you can pivot and go to, maybe 4 to 6 players that will really help your team. You look at a guy like Alex Bregman, who could play third base. If he goes to third, now you have a second baseman in Jazz Chisholm, who takes over for the loss of Gleyber Torres, who they're probably not getting back. And then when you look at first base, their first base is empty right now. You could go for either Christian Walker or you could try to trade for Cody Bellinger, which is something they've been talking about. And then you always can't rule out Teoscar Hernandez, who it seems like he's working towards reuniting with the Dodgers, but that's not guaranteed yet. So they could still go for a guy like Teoscar Hernandez. I think they have a lot of options now that they've showed they're willing to spend money.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do disagree with one thing that you said. I think that now that Soto is not a Yankee, I think Gleyber Torres is going to go back to the Yankees. He might not get the big lucrative deal that other teams are offering him, but the comfortability and being the homegrown guy, essentially, although he was traded from the Cubs, I do think that means something to him, and I do think that the Yankees now will do whatever it takes to keep him in that second base slot because they do prefer Jazz Chisholm either playing third or playing the outfield.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think there were reports that the Yankees weren't even interested in reuniting with Gleyber. So I don't think they're even going to go for him. I think even if they want Jazz to keep playing third, if they sign a guy like Bregman, he'd be playing second. because there has been reports that Bregman's willing to play second, depending on what team he signs with. So I just can't see a reunion between Glaber and the Yankees. I don't see it happening, unfortunately. Glaber's a Mariner, in my opinion.
The constant cycle of Mariners and second baseman continues.
On the Yankees, yes. They're going to
Amen.
have deja vu because it's, they're one of their best players signing with another team just because of how much money was put down. That's Juan Soto. That's what Robbie Cano did. And then the Mariners taking a Yankee second baseman, which would be Gleyber Torres. And Robbie Cano was the second baseman. So it just makes sense.
It's all there. It's all on
It's
paper.
the logic is there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, as far as the Yankees go, you have to make moves now. You can't not spend any money in free agency on at least one or two big names. Because now that you've shown that you're willing to spend money, that World Series window is closing. I know they just made it, but that window is still closing. You have Aaron Judge in his prime. You have to make this push now. There's no reason not to. So, I mean, we'll see.
We will see indeed. I am curious to see what these winter meetings hold. I imagine that we will be back at the end of them, hopefully, to discuss all the different moves that have been made.
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of out of material for this episode. Alex, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, hopefully we get a good winter meetings. Hopefully we get at least a few big name free agent signings. I mean, right? That's what the winter meetings are for. I know we got Soto, but hopefully we get a couple more now. And I think it's interesting that this Soto sweepstakes was so big, but I feel like people didn't speak enough about how at the end of the day it would be about the money offered and not the jersey that comes along with that money. Interestingly enough, I still think, if the Red Sox offered him $5 million more than the Mets did, the exact same contract, he would be in Boston right now. So I think it was just about who put down the most money and who gave the best offer on contract. It had nothing to do with what jersey he would be wearing, and that's where I'll tap out.
All right. Well, certainly some takes, certainly some ideologies here. If you're a Mets fan, comment down below how excited are you about Juan Soto in your lineup from 1 to 10.
Congratulations to the Mets.
Certainly congratulations. If you're a Yankee fan, let us know what you think the Yankees are going to pivot to for the rest of the offseason. And I guess that's all for now. So
that is. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.